Thank you, Abraham, so much for being here today. You must have known that I was coming also. I just found out yesterday that my 15-year-old daughter is cutting herself. And so I was in total despair last night, actually till about...
Why does it surprise you?
Why does what surprise me?
That she is cutting herself.
It doesn't surprise me. It just sends me into despair. And there's a couple questions about that. I was really doing the work and doing well. And there's a part of me that says, how can you do so well when she is in such misery?
That's illogical, isn't it? In other words, you can say that
Right.
if you're in the mood to beat up on yourself, which is your way of cutting yourself.
Right. And I see that. And so much has happened since I've been sitting in my chair listening to you today. And yet I know I need to go home to her. And still, I can feel so good with you here and hearing what you're saying, but I know the reality is I need to go back.
Well, you're going to take something with you today that you didn't have before, that as you know it and live it, you will teach through the clarity of your example, and you'll be able to give it to her. And there are some things that we want to give you before we spell that out in specifics. And that is, I want to play with you just a little bit and help you really feel how illogical the statement that you made was. You say, what right do I have to feel good when someone that I love feels this bad? And we say, that's like saying, I've been well, so now I'm going to be sick for the next 10 or 15 years to allow people who have been sick to be well. And you say, well, that doesn't follow, because if I give up my wellness, that won't make somebody else who's sick well. It's not like a pot that we're sharing. And the same thing follows. Your feeling good in no way is disrespectful of someone else feeling bad. In fact, your feeling good while they're feeling bad is the only hope you have of guiding them toward feeling good. That is too much for you to hear right now. You can hear it intellectually.
Right.
It logically appeals to you, but you can't make the vibrational jump. It's too much. Now, when you say it was not a shock to you when you heard that, tell us why. In other words, what kind of emotional sensing have you had about her?
Well, she was diagnosed with clinical depression in November, and she's had just...
Well, now, you say that like that means something, and we want to say blah, 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 blah. In other words, the diagnosis, all that means is somebody has measured her behavior against other patterns of others who have offered similar behavior, and then they've looked on this chart and said, yep, this is the label that we'll give you. And we say, that's helpful not at all. What have you witnessed in terms of what her guidance system is saying? What are her emotional displays?
She feels completely unloved and unsupported, probably by everyone in her life but me. And she has an alcoholic father who has just treated her terribly and very verbally abusive, many threats. Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. And I think it's just her self-value, and it's manifested,
Well, how much time does she spend with this abusive person?
Not very much.
How much time did she spend with this abusive person?
I was only married to him up until she was the age of 4, and she's now 15. That's what's kind of interesting about it. He still holds a great amount of power over her.
So why do you think he holds power? Why does anything hold power over anyone? Do you think that there's an unfulfilled desire there? Does she desire him as a father? Does she desire a relationship that she can't get? In other words, we don't feel that anything that he's done is responsible for how she feels. It feels to us that she has a desire that she has not been able to fulfill, and she's worn out from the gap. In other words, it's like she's been lost out there in the desert between Phoenix and Yuma, and she's just sort of worn out from running around out there in the desert. But what kinds of things does she say to you today? In other words, what's an average conversation that the two of you have today? How does it go?
Well, it's very interesting because we have a great relationship and there's a lot of love and a lot of laughter.
Well, don't get off the subject. We just
Well-
want to know what she says. In other words,
She just doesn't feel loved by him.
she's still talking about him.
Oh, yes.
What else?
She doesn't fit in.
If she were talking to us about him, we would say, oh, forget him. He was just your way in. What do you think she'd say about that? He was just your way in, and a really good way in. In other words, do you know how many children would benefit dramatically by the absence of their parents? Do you know that there are far more people who sit in this chair who have vibrational issues because parents are in their life than because they're not in their life? In other words, we would soothe that with her playfully. We don't think that's the issue that you think that it is. And we're not sure why, well, we are, but why you're making it the issue. In other words, we think it might be your issue more than it is her issue.
Very right.
So what's she talking about other than him? Is she popular at school? Does she have friends? Is there anything she does at school that she likes?
No, she hasn't attended school since November. She cannot emotionally go back. It causes too much anxiety for her. So she literally is being homeschooled.
So when she was going to school, what were the things that she would say when she would come home from school? What would she say?
Well, she hated school.
More specifically. Does she talk at all?
Yes, she does.
And when she talks, does she smile?
Yes, she does.
Does she ever laugh?
Yes, she does.
Does she ever cry?
Rarely.
Does she complain?
Yes.
So, on this emotional scale, is she joyful or sad?
She's both, but right now I'd say she's sad.
But usually?
Joyful. I'd say, if I had to describe her in a word, I would say angry.
Well, is there anything wrong with that?
No, that is my problem. And I think that's what's bringing...
Here's what we think is going on
Okay.
here. We think that she is such a normal teenage girl who has budding desires that she has no clue how to fulfill, who feels like she's being scrutinized by her peers, by her mother, which is normal, by people around her, by society, and she does not know how to measure up to what she is wanting. And because her desire to feel good is so strong, not feeling good feels so bad. And it feels to us that this action of cutting is not a vibrational match to this deep-seated anguish and despair that you think it is. We think that it is a bid for attention to be able to maintain something that she's decided feels better than something else. In other words, what conversations do you have with her about school? How do you feel about her not being in school?
At first I felt fine, and now I'm getting more nervous about it because I feel the further behind she gets, the further behind, the further behind.
We feel that concern from you. Mm-hmm. And it feels to us like it's easy for that concern to become sort of critical. In other words, if she would just sort of buck up, if she would just try a little, in other words, we can feel that you feel like if she would make some other decisions, not only would your life be easier, but your concern would be soothed. And so you want her to do that because you think you would feel better. And she can feel that coming on. Now, what's happening to her is she's feeling a whole lot better now she's not there. And we do not misunderstand. We don't think that it's necessarily a good thing that she's not there. We would like her to be in school and feel happy about being in school. We would like her to discover that she can be happy wherever she is. And there's a part of you that understands or can sense that as she's withdrawing from uncomfortable situations, that then she's just becoming more and more like a hermit. And and you worry that she's going to withdraw into something that she will not be able to recover from. If we were standing in your physical shoes, instead of worrying about that, we would begin saying things to her such as, more and more I am understanding that it's good for us to feel good. And when something doesn't feel good, I don't believe, say to her, that we should push through and try to make something that doesn't feel good. And for that reason, I went along with your decision, say to her as you empower, your decision to withdraw from the school situation because it did not feel good. And at some point, if you ever want to go back, that's a good thing too. But what we would encourage you to do is to give her a sense that you're really behind her relative to these decisions that she is making, because we think that's what's happening is she has found huge relief in not being at school for reasons that she has not yet spoken to you.
Okay.
And as she can feel you sort of getting ready to do something about that, she can feel your impatience about her not being in school. Now she's decided to do something, and she's read the book. She knows what she's supposed to do in order to be one who is categorized in that. So she's just doing that so that you will have the reaction that you're having, which will make you to step back and then allow her to do what you ought to allow her to do anyway. What you want to say to her is, honey, you don't have to do something extreme in order to get me to go along with what you want to do.
Got it.
We wish everybody could say that to their children, but most of you are very confused about what's appropriate for you to do. The society's got you convinced that you're responsible for her education and for her behavior. And you can't make her want something. You can't make her achieve something that she does not want to achieve. What you're wanting to do is to convey to her in as many ways as you can that she really is free to make her decisions. And you just want to soothe her sense of not being free and keep leaving things open-ended. In other words, there are so many wonderful things that are before her. This is something that will be so fast left behind, it won't even be a big issue. We don't think that in 5 or 10 years you'll even remember it. It is so insignificant. But we would do everything in our power to stop the diagnosis and the pigeonholing, because she's deliberately finding ways to conform with the labels that are being given to her.
Got it.
We would give her other labels. We'd say, you're a renegade, and I've always loved renegades. We would say, you are a nonconformist, and the brilliant minds of this world are nonconformists. We would say, you are beating your own drum and wanting to march to your own rhythm. You have never been a follower, nor have I. You're wanting to say to her, I honor your decisions, and I'll do everything that I can to back them up. And we're in this together in the sense that I'm behind you, but you are a powerful creator. I knew that the day I met you. And only a powerful creator would be born into an environment where your father would not be around. In other words, it took a very strong energy to come forth into that. I've always known that about you. In other words, shore her up and give her labels such as independent rather than manic depressive. Give her labels such as, I've always thought of you as the stable one. I've always known that there were wonderful things out there for you. I've always known that you would approach life in a different way. I've always known that you were special and unique. I've always known that you would find your way. And I see this strength. How wonderful it is that you are dealing with issues at this early age and coming to powerful conclusions that most of us never come to. In other words, read the biographies of the masters and the great ones. Almost all of them have something like this somewhere earlier in their experience, which causes them to come to strong determination, you see. Re-empower or do your best to help her feel her power, as you pointed out. And don't let them make you feel responsible for the choices that she's making. And let her know that too. Let her know that you're not going to hold that bag. You're not going to be responsible for the choices that she's making. Say to her, I honor your ability to choose, and I trust in the choices that you make, but I am not going to be held responsible for your choices. And say to her, and this is going to be better for us, because if I'm worrying that you might make a bad choice that will fall back on me, now I'm going to get all distorted, and I'm going to try to guide you in ways that I have no business guiding you. She wants to be free. She really is not feeling insecure. She's feeling trapped. Not by you, but by a society that presses pretty heavily.